How's it going, everyone? I am the Shaz here with the second installment in the card analysis series, this time going over the initial URs from Aqua. As with the first video on the Muse cards, we will be going over the cards in the order that you would see them if you sort by rarity. All of the references to base stats assume the card is fully tiled and at bond level 1. The first card we will go over is Initial Chika, also known as Chika 1 or Summer Adventure Chika. An active attribute skill type card, this card has become a meme not only in the All-Stars community, but within my own community as well. At Limit Break 0, she comes in with a paltry 2964 base appeal, a whopping 7113 base stamina, and 4742 base technique, giving her a 13.95% crit rate. Her tap active is a skill activation rate up for cards in the same strategy by 4.6% at skill level 3, activating at a 33% rate. Her passive is a stamina buff to all other members except herself by 4.6%, and her live show active, when activated at the beginning of a live, reduces damage taken by all notes by 2.2% for the entire live, with this LSA activating at a 30% rate. Much like her Muse counterpart, this Chika is a very hefty stamina stick, but her abilities don't take advantage of her best stat, stamina. The combination of her stats and her abilities render this card, even at max limit break, as a stamina stick backliner, which is part of the reason why this card is so memed on. Outside of getting bond levels or being a diehard Chika Oshi, this card doesn't really do anything other than increase your overall stamina pool and occasionally give you some extra damage reduction for voltage ranking runs during exchange events or SBL. If you do combine this card with the initial Honoka UR and another stamina stick, however, a card like this can skyrocket your overall stamina pool into the 100k range. The next card we will go over is Initial Riko, also known as Riko 1 or Angel Riko. A pure attribute guard type card, this card has the exact same stat line as the initial Kotori or Koptori UR. At Limit Break 0, she has identical base appeal and stamina, with both coming in at 44-46. Her highest stat is her technique, which comes in at a base 5928, giving her a 32.44% crit rate. The abilities on this card are a bit of a mixed bag. Riko's tap active is the worst for guard type cards, the damage reduction tap active, reducing 12% of the incoming damage for the next 10 nodes, with this skill activating at a 33% rate. Her passive is better, increasing the stamina of all cards in your formation by 3.6% at skill level 3, and the best ability in her kit is her LSA, which, when switching strategies, has a 30% chance to cleanse all stat reductions. This does not include base stat reductions, however, so using a card like this on Genki Zenkai Day or any of the second Niji solos will prove fruitless and just cost you a card slot. Overall, Initial Riko is a one-trick pony, as most people will just use her for her Switch Cleanse live show active, which has the highest activation rate for this type of skill at 30%. As with the initial Honoka, this UR has the poor damage reduction tap active and a kit that doesn't take advantage of her best stat, which for Riko is her technique. Most people that own this card will most likely try to get appeal plus group insights on her, as she will rarely ever see frontline sustain duties. Next, we get to the first of the third years with Initial Kanon, also known as Kanon 1 or Sea God Kanon. A natural attribute voltage type card, this card is arguably the best card from the initial set of URs between both Muse and Aqua. At Limit Break 0, she has 6663 base appeal, a low 2964 base stamina, and 5181 base technique, giving her a 15.24% crit rate. The kit of abilities on this card is what made her the most desirable starting card when the game first released, and has what could be considered the gold standard of backline appeal boosting abilities. Her tap active provides an appeal increase to all cards in her strategy by a whopping 8% for the next 5 notes at skill level 3, activating at a 33% rate. Her passive provides an all-member appeal buff of 3.6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, if activated upon completing an appeal chance, increases the appeal of all cards by 5% for the remainder of the live, with this LSA activating at a 30% rate. Initial Kanon, even as an older card, is still highly regarded as a usable UR at higher limit breaks. As of the recording of this video, this card still stands as the card in the natural attribute with the highest base appeal at max limit break at 11,934. In addition, having this card at max limit break means that this card has the potential to provide up to 15.2% additional appeal to all other cards in your team, assuming she has her skill level 5 passive, 3 appeal plus medium group insights, and her live show active triggers on the first appeal chance. Though her upcoming Fest card on the global server is the superior frontline scorer, this card still packs a punch from the backline if you keep her tiled and farm good insights on her. Next, we have the Student Council President, Initial Daya, also known as Daya 1 or Priestess Daya. An elegant attribute SK type card, this card is a pretty good scorer for the attribute even though she may have a few blemishes. At limit break 0, she starts with 6663 base appeal, 2964 base stamina, and 5181 base technique, which leaves her with a 15.24% crit rate. Yes, if these numbers sound eerily familiar, that's because this Daya shares a stat line with the initial Kanon we just reviewed. Her tap active provides a voltage boost on the next time you use your SP gauge, adding 31% of her appeal to that gauge, with this skill activating at the standard 33% rate. Her passive is the first of the Initial Aqours URs that has a bit of a restriction, as she only increases the technique of other elegant attribute cards by 4.6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, if activated upon appeal chance completion, increases the appeal of all members by 5% for the rest of the live, with this skill activating at a 30% rate. As I stated earlier, there are a lot of commonalities between this card and Initial Kanon, exact same stat line and same live show active. What separates these two cards are their typing, tap actives, and passives. First, Daya's SK typing means that while she may be able to activate 1 or 2 more tap actives per live if you use her in your frontline, she loses out on the constant extra voltage that something like Kanon gets for being a voltage type. Second, her tap active, which is commonly referred to as the SP Gauge Bomb tap active, only really gets highlighted if you're trying to cycle SP gauges very quickly, as the voltage gain does not ignore the hard cap of 250k voltage when you use your gauge. Finally, due to her limited passive, while it may help out high crit rate cards of the same attribute to crit more frequently, it doesn't provide the constant boost in scoring that would allow this card to become a good backliner. All in all, a situational frontline card if you own stronger cards, but nothing more. Next, we finish up the second years by covering Initial Yo, also known as Yo 1 or Bunny Rabbit Yo. A cool attribute guard card, this card is in many ways like Initial Ellie. Both cards share the same stat line, 5181 base appeal, 2964 base stamina, and 6663 base technique, giving her a 34.6% crit rate. Yo's tap active heals 26% of her low stamina at skill level 3, activating at the standard 33% rate. Her passive buffs the stamina of same strategy cards by 6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, the only deviation in her kit from Initial Ellie, provides a heal of 20% of her stamina when taking over 1000 damage, activating at a 40% rate. Much like Initial Ellie, this Yo is considered an offensive sustain card, meaning she'll help you score better than heal you if you run her as your main sustain card. In addition, at max limit break, she has a respectable, for a guard type card, 9282 base appeal and 11,934 base technique, giving her a 50.1% crit rate and making for a fantastic card to put in your center 3. Outside of that, however, if you're needing a card that keeps you alive, you're going to want to grab a card other than this one. She's normally only run as a frontliner due to her passive abilities, but there are a few songs you want to use her for in your backline if you have her. Kowareyasuki by Guilty Kiss, and Kasumi's third solo, Margaret. Because the advanced difficulty version of these songs deals over 1400 damage per note, having this card in your backline gives your main scoring strategy an opportunity to heal at every tap, which should keep you in the green stamina the entire song. Now we get to our first year, Initial Yoshiko, also known as Yoha 1 or Haunted Princess Yoha. An elegant attribute SP type, this is another card that will always have a use. At limit break 0, she shares the Initial Ellie Initial Yo stat line, 5181 base appeal, 2964 base stamina, 6663 base technique, giving her a 34.6% crit rate. Her tap active provides an SP gauge fill of 8% at skill level 3, activating at the standard 33% rate. Her passive ability provides a 6% technique bonus to other cards in her strategy, and her live show active, if activated at the beginning of a live, increases the SP gauge gain of all cards by 10%, but only for the first 15 notes of the live and activating at a 30% rate. As with the two cards with the similar stat lines, this Yoha is a crit machine at higher limit breaks, but what arguably makes her more valuable than your Ellie is her tap active. The ability to cycle through SP gauges while also critting at a 50% or higher rate, based on other passives in your formation, can provide for some crazy strategies, allowing you to not only score well without having a voltage type card, but allowing you to hit the 250k cap on SP gauges. Pairing a card like this with Miracle Voyageo, Detective Hanayo, Fes Emma, Fes Ellie, or the upcoming Fes Kasumi will give you an insight into a growing crit/SP gauge fill strat that is starting to gain ground over on the JP server. Next up, we head over to the library and analyze the initial Hanamaru UR, also known as Initial Maru, Maru 1, or Sheep Maru. A pure attribute SP type card, this UR has a very unique stat line. She starts with the low 44-46 base appeal at limit break 0, the very poor 29-64 base stamina, but tries to make up for those two by sporting an unreal 74-10 base technique, giving her a 36.79% crit rate, trailing only Fes Emma, Fes Ellie, and the upcoming Fes Nozomi for the highest crit rate of any UR at limit break 0 in the game currently. Her tap active is the SP Gauge Bomb type, providing 31% of her appeal to the next SP gauge as voltage, activating at the standard rate. Her passive is an all-member technique buff, increasing the stat by 3.6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, if activated at the beginning of the live, adds 10% of her appeal to the SP gauge, activating at a 30% rate. For the most part, this card is seen as one of the best non-Fes cards to utilize in your Center 3 for pure songs, due to her insanely high technique stat, which is weighted higher than appeal in the calculations towards SP gauge voltage. However, due to her technique buff passive and very weak live show active, that's the most you'll use the card for, as she gets beat out for consistent voltage by a lot of other voltage type cards. With the last of the third years, we get to Initial Mari, known as Mari 1 or Bittersweet Mari. A natural attribute voltage type card, she shares the same stat line with Initial Rin. At limit break 0, she has a matching 48-84 base appeal and stamina with 50-38 base technique, giving her a 29.82% crit rate. Her tap active is a common one for voltage types, providing a voltage boost equal to 31% of her own appeal at skill level 3, activating at a 33% rate. Her passive is decent, providing an appeal buff to all natural attribute cards by 4.6% at skill level 3. Her live show active, if activated upon appeal chance completion, increases the skill activation rate of all members by 10%, but only for the next 10 notes, and with this skill activating at a 50% rate. While Initial Mari can be a frontline scorer, she gets overshadowed by Initial Kanon in almost every way. If you don't have Initial Kanon, however, Mari makes for a great alternative, especially for natural attribute songs, and if you can combine her with either Party Kotori or Snow Halation Kotori. If you do have Kanon or other natural attribute cards that are stronger than Mari, she turns into a good, not great, backliner since she buffs same attribute cards with her passive. Finally, we get to Initial Ruby, also known as Ruby 1 or Circus Ruby. An active attribute skill type card, this card was considered the gold standard upon game release for the best initial UR sustain cards. She starts with 44-46 base appeal, 66-63 base stamina, and 36-99 base technique, giving an equivalent stat line to Initial Honoka and a 10.88% crit rate. The similarities end there, however, as Ruby's tap active provides a shield based on 26% of her stamina at skill level 3, activating at the standard 33% rate. Her passive and live show actives were what made this card so desirable, as her passive increases the appeal of all cards in her strategy by 6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, if activated at the beginning of a live, provides all members with an appeal buff of 5% for the remainder of the live. The reason why this card was so sought after was because, well, simply put, her best stat was utilized in a positive way, and she has the best set of score boosting passive abilities at the game's release. She was also the best guest card upon game release due to these abilities. There is one downside to this card. It is extremely hard to justify backlining her. Because of her passive, which only buffs same strategy cards, the only reason why she'd be thrown in the backline is for the opportunity to proc her LSA, which is not the greatest reason to want to backline a card. Until you have a very strong healer or shielder, most will opt to continue to use this Ruby as their main sustain card because of her score boosting abilities. With that, we conclude this review on the Initial Aqours UR set. If you have any other questions regarding cards, game mechanics, or upcoming events, I stream 5 days a week over at twitch.tv/IamTheShaz, so feel free to swing by. I have a few special videos lined up next for this series, so be on the lookout for those. I've been I Am The Shaz, take it easy, be nice to each other, and I'll see you all next time.